Sasha.
And welcome back to So You Live Under a Rock. This week we're going to be talking about chapters 7 through 10 of Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief. We have already talked about chapters 1 through 6 so far in the previous videos on our channel. So if you haven't seen those, go give them a watch so that you're not confused or missing anything, because now we're really getting into the stuff. Sasha, what happens in chapter 7?
Chapter 7, My Dinner Goes Up in Smoke. Percy's overwhelmed by the camp and all that he's learned. He's curious to find out who his dad is, but Annabeth wisely tells him that he may never know. And Percy must stay at camp to keep safe from monsters. Camp Half-Blood has a magical border that keeps out anything bad, and if Percy returns to the regular world, he's basically begging for trouble. Annabeth explains that he may only leave with permission or if he's sent on a quest. Percy asks Annabeth about the summer solstice, as she remembers some weird vibes from the winter solstice trip to Mount Olympus with Clarice and Luke. She also hears whispers about something being stolen, and if it isn't returned by summer solstice, there will be war. Percy and Annabeth head back to their cabins, and Percy talks to Luke, who reveals that Annabeth's itching for a quest, but she can't go until somebody special shows up, whatever that means.
I feel like that summary sounds like a lot, but I felt like this chapter was pretty...
This one was pretty
short.
Quick.
Yeah.
This was a quick chapter. It's just kind of,
boom,
just getting it done with. My first note here is Annabeth is so her mother's daughter. She's so prideful. Annabeth's mom is Athena, and she's just very prideful whenever she speaks, which I think translates to why I ranked her the way I did the last episode.
Oh, you're a hater.
Not a hater, just she intrigues me.
I have this conversation between Percy and Annabeth. It's kind of very early on in the chapter. It's very vulnerable. Like, Annabeth is telling Percy a lot of hard truths. Like I said in our last video, she's really keeping it real with him. Like, she's not bullshitting him like other people have been doing. She's telling him, like, it's not easy. You might not know who your dad is. It's not fun to be a demigod. Like, it's not fun to be who we are, but, like, it is who we are.
I have a note here about how when Annabeth is talking to Percy and they're discussing Olympus, and she basically is describing what public transportation is to him, and then just follows that whole section up with, you are a New Yorker, right? Which I think is just a really funny moment between these two characters. Annabeth is getting her personality out there. Again, going back to, she's very prideful.
It's just who she is.
It is who
it's
she
just
is.
who she is. And I don't know, I'm an Annabeth apologist, so maybe don't take everything I have to say as like...
I love Annabeth. I think she's
great.
a really great character. I think rereading these chapters, the beginning of her is a little rough. We don't necessarily know everything about her yet, and I think that attributes to that roughness, because she's a little rough around the edges.
Another note I have here is we see Luke really leaning into that big brother mentor role for Percy, which I think he's really cherishing, like not having any siblings, not really being able to go home to his family during the year because he's always been at boarding school. So I think that's definitely a relationship to keep an eye on.
I also have a note about Luke. We see him, there's a bitterness in one of the lines that he delivers, which surprises Percy, and it surprises us as the audience as well, because Luke is being set up as this brotherly figure, and he seems like a pretty easygoing guy. So what's this bitterness at the back of, his sentences?
He seems to have some beef with his dad.
Yeah, we also get a little bit of insight in this chapter on how exactly this system is working between the gods and the Half-Bloods. And I have a note here about how it is similar to almost like the adoption system or the foster system. And we see some characters a little bit, jaded by this system, which could be translated to how we see the foster system in our real world.
She's really good!
The only last note that I had on chapter 7 is we see Percy they're at the dinner time. Yeah, he orders a blue cherry Coke in honor of his mom because he has just found out he could quite literally wish for anything.
Word to Sally.
So he first orders just a regular Coke, and then he sends it back to wherever it goes and gets a blue cherry Coke instead.
Chapter 8. We capture a flag. As Percy settles in he discovers he's great at sword fighting, and he also has a strange connection to water. In a sword fight with Luke, Percy catches him off guard and takes the win. Later, Percy and Grover talk about Grover's desire for a searcher's license, but Grover is kind of secretive about all the details. All he tells Percy is that protecting Percy during a quest might get him closer to that goal. We also get some details about the big three gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Grover shares that kids of the big three are super powerful, so their godly parents decided to stop having kids because they kept causing chaos. Zeus, being the rule breaker that he is, had a daughter named Talia. Hades got pissed and sent monsters after her once he discovered that Zeus had broken their promise. Talia saved her fellow half-bloods and satyr by fighting those monsters solo on her way into camp. As she was dying, Zeus turned her into a pine tree that now guards the camp borders known as Half-Blood Hill. Even later on, during the game of Capture the Flag, Percy gets ambushed by Clarice and her friends, leaving him with a gnarly arm wound. He falls into a creek, and even though he's weak, he manages to mysteriously fend off his attackers. The blue team wins the game, and Annabeth notices Percy's arm has magically healed. Then, a hellhound from the Fields of Punishment shows up to mess with Percy, but gets shot by Chiron. Chiron is quick to point out that someone from inside the camp must have summoned it. Percy dives back into the water to heal, and suddenly, a green hologram appears above his head in the shape of a trident, and Percy has been claimed by Poseidon, and Percy is a son of Poseidon.
The big reveal!
The big reveal!
He's a son of Poseidon, so all those water references that we told you to pocket for later, bring them back out of the pocket!
Here they are! They're out to play. Something that is so insane to me about this chapter, and I think other people have spoken about this on TikTok, and I think it comes up again maybe in some spin-offs, is this chapter kind of implies that Hades is a fascist, Nazi sympathizer. Here's a quote. I'm not just saying that off the dome for fun. World War II, that was basically a fight between the sons of Zeus and Poseidon on one side and the sons of Hades on the other. The winning side, Zeus and Poseidon, made Hades swear an oath with them. No more affairs with mortal women. So when you think about the actual war, you know who wins, you know who loses. I think it's just kind of an insane point to include. It's so harsh, I feel, of an implication.
Yeah, and I think, it's not in the books for sure. I think this is when I was doing some research for our pyramid. Somewhere in some description, they have Hitler for Hades. The description of him or something, it popped up on the wiki for him for this book, and I was like, oh my god.
Wow.
Just to bring it back just the beginning of the book.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped.
No, that's okay. We were just so excited about Poseidon's, just the reveal. We see in the very beginning of this chapter, Percy's learning basically how to be Greek. Annabeth is teaching him. And he's basically trying out all these different talents, which we were watching, I'm gonna go on, a video documentary on the Pixie Hollow fairy books, because we were both really into them. And in this, they have different talents. So Tinkerbell is a tinker fairy, there are water fairies, and this just kind of reminded me of that.
Oh man,
series.
What a parallel.
Just because he was trying to figure out what talents he was good at, and the only two talents that he was really good at, one was canoeing, which
He's in the water.
Water sport, and then was sword fighting. And another moment that happens that I think attributes to his success in sword fighting in this particular scene is the fact that he pours water over his head. He mimics what Luke does. He sees Luke pour cold water. Thank you. He sees Luke pour cold water over his head, so Percy is trying to mimic his older brother, and so he pours the water on his head too, and all of a sudden he's so much stronger and he's able to disarm Luke. And then we also, in this moment, Grover comes clean about the Talia situation. Grover lets Percy know that he was the satyr that was supposed to be guarding Talia, and that, is something that was weighing on his chest. We saw that in chapters 1 through 3 with Grover, and now we're actually getting that insight from Grover himself.
After that conversation and after World War II, Capture the Flag. I as much as I dislike the movie adaptations, I think they did a really great job with this scene, because now when I read this scene, that's kind of what I picture. Like, it paints a really good picture of the woods that they're in and the creek and all of these things, and like, I just like,
So cool. Like,
kudos to the movie.
something about this particular scene, the capture the flag scene, is Annabeth basically sets Percy up, which I was not a big fan of. She knew that Clarice and Percy had this beef. She knew that Clarice is going to try to take it one step further, so she basically puts Percy as a decoy, so Clarice and her crew go over and they try to mess with him. Clarice basically tries to shish kebab Percy. And so Annabeth and Luke are able to go over and get the flag, which I thought was not very nice.
Not very nice, but also, like, one of the notes I have is, like, for as big of a deal as Capture the Flag is, don't you think Clarice, who is, like, the leader of this other team, would want to go get the frickin' flag?
So true.
Like, why is she wasting her time? Like, yeah, they have
They
their
just
beef.
met, too.
They have this silly little beef. Like, you're gonna go ruin this game that's, like, central to the camp to go bully this kid that you just met. Like,
That her character and why she did that is very strange. I am also questioning it now. You're right, that is very odd that she wouldn't.
Yeah.
And she's been at camp a very long time as well. It's not like this is 2 days in for her.
Right.
And later in the chapter, we see water healing Percy. A hellhound comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Very strange. I think they went from 0 to 100 and then 150 with the hellhound.
So true.
And then Percy's claimed right at the end.
So he finds out who his dad is. He doesn't have to have that, like, lingering fear of never knowing. So snaps for Percy, snaps for Poseidon.
Now I'm wondering, is it worth him knowing at this point? Because, you know, we know about the big three. We know that there's usually trouble that follows this position. So are we
Now
feeling
what?
really lucky or are we scared?
Chapter 9. I am offered a quest. After Poseidon claims Percy, he is rewarded with his very own cabin and some other freedoms. But he's also been tasked with a world-saving quest. Even though things are starting to look up for Percy, he's feeling pretty isolated and upset after seeing and hearing that he's being blamed for his mom's vanishing act back home. That night, Grover gives him a pep talk to chat with Chiron about accepting the quest and consulting the oracle. Chiron shares that Zeus and Poseidon are having major beef because Zeus thinks Poseidon stole his lightning bolt, which is like his main power symbol. Poseidon is denying it, and he wants an apology by the summer solstice, which is also when Zeus wants his bolt back. If this quest doesn't work out, there's a huge war on the horizon. Zeus figures if Poseidon's son returns the bolt, it'll be a peace offering. Percy goes to the oracle for advice and is told to head west and confront a god to find the stolen item. The oracle also drops a bomb, saying he'll get betrayed by a friend and fail to save what matters most along the way. Chiron believes that Hades might have stolen the Master Bolt to mess with Zeus because he was salty that Zeus had another kid, breaking their pact. Hades probably knew Zeus would blame Poseidon, and that's why he tried to off Percy with monsters like the Minotaur before the quest even began. Percy's furious that Hades' actions led to his mom's disappearance and freaked out the whole camp. So Percy is fired up and chooses Grover and Annabeth to join him so that Grover can get his searcher's license and Annabeth can get her quest fix.
So right off the bat, my first note about this chapter is we see Percy internally. He was just starting to feel like he had a home. He was feeling like a normal kid. He had somewhere to belong in the Hermes cabin. And now all of a sudden he has his own room and everybody knows that Poseidon's his dad. Now this means that Poseidon broke a pact and there's a lot of ramifications coming with this truth. So I'm feeling a little bad for Percy right off the bat.
I think it's really messed up that someone delivered this newspaper with these accusations from Gabe, basically a mortal newspaper saying Gabe saying that Percy is the one who is responsible for Sally's disappearance. Obviously we know the truth, but like it's just really messed up that someone would go out of their way to find this and then give it to Percy.
It's a little bit of a mystery. Who's trying to get underneath Percy's skin?
Yeah.
I have a note here. Now that we know that Percy is Poseidon's son, that means that he is technically half-brothers with a lot of these gods, specifically Mr. D, which I think a funny moment happens after the reveal. Mr. D basically assumes the role of an annoyed older brother, which I think is just a funny comparison to think about. Because now, he has, Percy is thousands and thousands of years younger than him. So he is truly the older
brother.
annoyed brother.
I think it's really interesting, and I don't know if maybe I misinterpreted this, but I think it's interesting that Zeus kind of suspected Percy of stealing this lightning bolt before it was even really confirmed that Percy was Poseidon's son. And you can kind of see this because Chiron tells Percy that Zeus is thinking that if Poseidon's son returns the bolt, it'll be like good and done.
Now, how does Zeus know that Percy is even around?
That's what I'm saying.
And that's something we don't find that out in this chapter, and I'm referring to my brain, and I don't think we ever really do.
I don't think it ever really comes up, but it is just like
how does Zeus know?
Something that's yeah.
I guess Grover, they had eyes on him for a while. They knew he had some sort of potential, but how did Zeus know?
No one really knew he was Poseidon's son.
Yeah, so that is something I don't think we'll ever get an answer to.
Yeah.
And then later on in this chapter, Percy goes to see the oracle in a very iconic location.
Totally.
The attic. The prophecy is, the quest is, you shall go west and face the god who has turned. You shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned. You shall be betrayed by one who calls you a friend, and you shall fail to save what matters most in the end. That's a lot to unpack.
And I think you can kind of assume Percy is thinking it's going to be about Grover, because that's his best friend, and he is really distraught by this to the point where he won't even tell Chiron everything that he heard in this prophecy. So
Percy only tells him half of what the oracle says.
Chiron does tell him, not everything is verbatim. It can be a little puzzly, a little tricky, so it's not always good as gold, whatever the oracle says.
And then based on this prophecy, and just everybody kind of comes to this conclusion that they think that the person who's setting Percy up is Hades. So now they are saying, hey, you gotta go to Hades and figure this out.
My last note that I have for this quest is we learn of some pretty interesting nicknames that Percy and Annabeth have for each other. Annabeth calls Percy Seaweed Brain, and Percy calls her Wise Girl. These are kind of
They're cute
little pet names that do have some prevalence throughout the rest of the series, and I think we will be referring back to them in the future.
Chapter 10, I Ruined a Perfectly Good Bus. As Percy, Grover, and Annabeth get ready to start their quest, Luke gives Percy some flying shoes. But Percy's worried that Zeus might zap him from the sky if he wears them, so he gives them to Grover just in case. Chiron gives Percy a pen that can transform into a sword called Riptide that can't hurt mortals.
Take you away to the dark side.
Okay. Riptide that can't hurt mortals, only monsters. Once they get to the city, Percy starts thinking about his family. Grover shares that Sally was trying to protect him by sticking around with Smelly Gabe because his stench masked Percy's scent from other monsters. While they're riding the bus towards the entrance of the underworld, 3 old ladies who look like Mrs. Dodds hop on. Turns out the old ladies are Furies. Percy takes Annabeth's invisible cap and sneaks past them, hoping that the Furies are only after him. But they go after Annabeth and Grover. Percy, still invisible, takes the wheel to get the regular people off the bus. He ditches the cap and starts a fight with the Furies to distract them from Annabeth and Grover. But they join in on the fight before Percy uses Riptide to turn 2 of them into dust. As he tries to take out the last Fury, the bus bursts into flames. The last remaining Fury calls for backup, so Percy, Annabeth, and Grover make a run for the woods.
So they are on this quest, they are out and about, they have left the camp, they're gone. Something that I think is a little silly in this chapter is Grover has these magic reeds that he plays, and this is something that satyrs have, and this is a skill that they're able to play these reeds. Grover is not very good, but one of the songs he knows how to play is So Yesterday by Hilary Duff. With that, I think this confirms that The Lightning Thief is a period piece.
It definitely, again, dates the book with this reference. That's my first note, too. Hilary Duff being one of the only 2 songs that Grover knows on the reed pipes. is just, it's dating the book.
It's just unreal, considering, like, I love Hilary Duff. I wish she would make, like, a true comeback.
It's just funny.
But
and
you
it's
just
funny
know she hasn't put anything out since this book was written.
And it's funny that Grover, of, like, all, well, satyrs, I guess.
Yeah.
This would be one of the songs that he knows.
I just feel like, I don't know, Grover has, like, a silly personality that I feel like we haven't gotten to dive into yet. And I think this is, like, the first little, like, crack at his, like, shell.
Agreed. And then just going back to Luke giving Percy the flying shoes, it was a gift from his own dad, Hermes, for his quest, and he wasn't able to use them again, obviously. He's not been on a quest since. And then Chiron immediately telling Percy, maybe this isn't really a good idea using these shoes, and giving them to Grover.
Probably a good call.
Yeah, so we'll see with those, because obviously they're probably going to come back at some point.
Something I noticed, when they were actually fighting the Furies, they had some whips. Where were those the first time around with Mrs. Dodds? I feel like they kind of came out of nowhere and gave them a little bit more of an unfair advantage this time around.
They just keep powering up every time we see them.
I know. So, am I worried about Percy and the friends on this quest? 100%.
Yes.
100%.
We also see the return of the sword pen, Riptide. Chiron gives it to Percy, which we saw in chapter 1. That was something that he used against Mrs. Dodds, and now it's returned.
I do wish that I had a ukulele to perform Riptide for everyone here, but even if I did, I probably wouldn't. So,
if you guys want, we'll get one and we'll learn it. No, we won't.
Don't
say
don't
that.
Encourage that.
I'll seriously get it. And we have a moment on the bus where Grover's basically just spelling out why Percy's mom married Smelly Gabe in the first place. Because his aura was also yuck. Grover was explaining that as well.
Could smell him from, like, the bus stop, which wasn't close, but wasn't far. You know?
Grover said that Percy still kind of smelled like Gabe, and it's been weeks since Percy had even seen Gabe.
And he wasn't even with him for that long, so that shows you Gabe's nasty.
Yeah, and then we have a moment where Percy's obviously in the right direction, is trying to save his friends from these Furies, and he takes the bus wheel from the driver. He's invisible, he's wearing Annabeth's cap, and he jerks it over, and everybody flies over. And you're telling me that this was your top spot guy. Like, intentions were good.
Yeah.
But delivery, maybe a little reckless.
Yeah.
So we see the bus explode right at the end, which has all of their stuff in it. We're quite literally 20 minutes into this quest, and they've now lost all of their stuff.
That's kind of a worst case scenario for me. I don't know what I would do. So I'm glad I wasn't on that quest.
I'm glad I'm not on that quest either.
No hate to the
They're gonna do
the
great.
trio.
Just not for me.
Not for me.
Alrighty guys, so now we are going to do our pyramid. This week we are basing this pyramid off of the chapters 6 through 10 characters, and we're gonna get right into it.
Alrighty, who did you have in your very bottom spot?
So bottom spot, I have Clarice, because she tried to shish kebab Percy.
So do I.
Perfect. I think we had her the last time bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah, she just doesn't get better.
No.
Unfortunately, she's kind of the worst.
This is kind of where she's gonna live. Not saying she might always be in this very last spot, but for now, yeah.
She's not great. We don't love her.
Okay.
Who did you have next?
So, now this one might be a little controversial. We had a little beef about her last time.
Stop it!
I have Annabeth as 6.
What is wrong with you?
Many things. So, the reason why I put her here is because I'm really not a fan of how she set Percy up to be basically this bait for Clarice. She is truly a daughter of Athena. She follows up when Percy confronts her about, hey, you set me up. And she said, daughters of Athena always have a plan.
Exactly. She has a plan. She's a strategist.
What if Percy died?
Well, he didn't.
But what if
That's against the rules. Death is against the rules.
Where's the rule book?
Chiron said it before they started.
But where is it? I think her intentions, she was really just trying to win, which I get it. Winning's fun, but at the expense of being shish kebabs, I'm not a fan.
I think you're going to really hate my
Which
ranking.
Who do you have as 6?
Poseidon. Because, yes, we find out he's Percy's father, and that's great, but he's an absent father. He hasn't been there for Percy. He hasn't done anything.
I have him one spot up. I have Annabeth and then him.
I'm fine, as long as he's on the bottom.
Yeah, he's on the bottom, for sure. Because he's an absentee dad.
Yeah, he has, but his picture is pretty great.
He only outed himself as Percy's dad because he had to. It was
he was kind of like pushed against the wall.
I mean, Percy was at camp for several days before deciding even...
People were just catching on and he got scared. And that's just embarrassing.
Oh, that's okay. You put Annabeth there if you want.
Well, what if I told you Annabeth is not there for me?
How far up is she?
Way far up.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Chiron. I have Chiron next.
Oh God. Something tells me we should have discussed these prior to filming.
Who do you have?
Do you want to know my entire bottom 4?
Yeah, I do. Actually.
Okay, my bottom 4 were Clarice, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades.
Well, Zeus and Hades aren't on mine.
Oh, should I take them off?
I only had Poseidon because the claiming aspect.
I was like doing it from the perspective of like they've dragged Percy into like their beef.
Okay,
and, like,
I would agree that they go bottom row then.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
sure.
I'll take it.
I'll put Annabeth higher up because I really was marking her down for this moment with Clarice. But obviously Percy trusts her enough to come on the quest, so there's some redeeming quality of her. So she could go here.
We can compromise. So who?
She doesn't even want to pretend to put her on.
I'll bring her closer. She's over here. She's off to the side. I'll bring her right here. Who do you have next?
I have Mr. D.
I do as well. Why do you have him?
Because there were other characters that just did so much better than him. He is being punished for
something.
For something. We do actually know what it is.
Yeah, I just don't.
I just can't recall it in this moment. He was hitting on someone who was forbidden. Zeus cursed him.
Now he can't drink wine.
He can't drink wine, so he only drinks sodas and other things.
I mean, I love a good Diet Coke too, but I've never tried to hit on someone who I'm not allowed to hit on. So, next, I have Chiron.
And I have Annabeth.
Seems like she's going to be a point of contingency for us.
She will be, at least in this first book, because she set Percy up with Clarice. She made Percy go to the section. She knew Clarice couldn't not go for the bait.
No. She is a
That is what happened.
She is a daughter of Athena, so she's a strategist.
Okay.
She is the female goddess of war strategy, right?
Yeah.
So she's just thinking about the best way to win, which, yes, maybe she shouldn't have done it at Percy's expense.
12 years old.
But I know Percy's the main character here, but there's other people at the camp besides Percy. You know?
I do know. But also,
I mean,
the plan was to set someone up to be
now what if
hurt. Yes.
What if this whole situation of setting Percy up led to him being claimed? And led to some deep truths that Percy needed to realize one way or another.
Oh, so you're saying it was a good thing that this happened, that he got...
Maybe. Percy's been a whiny and you know that. And this is going to toughen him up. And I think he'll be grateful for this one day.
Okay. I'll give it to you. Mostly because I'm really leaning into Annabeth. She's allowed to go on this quest with Percy, so Percy obviously is not holding it against her. Next person is Chiron, which I could bring back down. He's another character who doesn't necessarily do...
We can pop him there.
Yeah.
We'll pop him here. I'm willing to negotiate this spot. He's kind of just around. He definitely,
he answers questions.
He helps out, but,
not really too much going on.
Not higher, not lower.
Who do you have next?
I have Percy.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
Percy, and maybe this was harsh, and I knew you weren't going to like this, especially considering I ranked him first not too long ago. However, as the book goes on, I like Percy less and less. And I know that's a hot take.
Hot take.
But I think the side characters get stronger and more dynamic, and Percy kind of stays really just kind of there, you know? And in these chapters, yes, he's learning a lot, and yes, he gets a quest, but like, I think he's still working through some internal issues that he can't really be the hero he needs to be.
Ooh, I like all those descriptors. That wasn't a real word. I'm not gonna use it.
That's okay.
So Percy's my number 1 rank this week. Simply,
Ooh.
I know, and simply because he has been thrown into several circumstances in these past couple of chapters that he's had to rise above, and I feel that speaks highly enough that he could get that top spot. But I totally agree with what you're saying. I do agree he needs this growth on an internal level. And I was purely ranking him based on the external violence that occurred
Against him.
So,
Which is a fair point. Maybe we skip to the second row.
Yeah.
So I believe we may have had the same individuals on that row.
So I had Luke over there.
As did I.
He really takes on a brotherly role with Percy, and we see Percy starting to feel at home, and I think that Luke attributed to that.
I agree.
So I put him up pretty high.
Yeah, he's definitely doing some good things for Percy. I think he is a shoulder to lean on while Percy is kind of figuring out this hero role. Luke has a lot of experience at the camp. He's older.
Yeah.
He's cute. I don't know. Next I have Grover.
I have Grover as well.
He's really solid this chapter, or these chapters, I should say. I don't know, like I said, I think we're starting to see a lot of his like silly personality, and I don't know, I like Grover. I think he's becoming a lot stronger of a
She
character.
likes Grover now, but chapters 1 through 3, she wasn't in Grover's fan base.
I will give this to you, as he is your 1 spot. But she is my 1 spot. Again.
What shall we do?
What if I were to challenge, we have a double 1 spot. I think they're both becoming really strong characters. I'm liking a lot where their trajectories are headed.
I would agree.
I feel great about having a double top spot. I'm not sure I could reach the top, so I think we'll just put them together in front of everyone else.
So thanks for... That camera was on slow-mo, so hopefully something came out of that one.
Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. We'll be back next week with more chapters, analysis, chit-chat of Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief. In the meantime, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and subscribe to our YouTube. And we will see you next week. Bye!